Okay. So I would like to tell you more now about how to submit fair data to PANGAEA, in particular how you need to prepare your data and metadata to us. I'm working the project of the German Marine Research Alliance. I'm also data editor at PANGAEA. So we've already heard from Malik what data types or types of data we accept at PANGAEA, and I would like to go a little more into detail now. So we focus on field observation and experimental data. And here we have some details about the format. So our focus is on tabular data. So please submit your data to us as comma or tab delimited text files, or in spreadsheet format like Excel files, but we also archive binary objects like images and videos or netcdf files. And of course, together with your data, please also submit any documentation to us that's related to your data. And this can be, for example, in plain text or PDF format or Word files. What we do not accept is raw data without metadata, sequence data like FASTA files, model data without any relation to field data. What we mean with that are numerical simulations and software and code. And the reason for that is that there are much better data repositories for that do much better quality control of the data that we cannot do at PANGAEA. And that's the reason we do not accept these data types at PANGAEA. But if you have mixed data sets with, for example, environmental data and sequence data, it's possible to link these other data sets to PANGAEA data. So now I would like to show you a FAIR data set at PANGAEA. We've already heard by Malik about the FAIR principles of data management. And you can see here a data set of a research group with Heinke. And to make it findable, we provide a full dataset citation with a DOI. And also the data is equipped with a full set of metadata, like a data abstract or information about the project and any references that are related to the dataset, for example. It's searchable online. It's also accessible. So we use standardized communication protocols. The metadata is always open, but it's possible to have an access restriction of up to 2 years at PANGAEA. If you scroll down further down the dataset landing page, you can see even more metadata like the events, which is the station data. So where did you take your samples or measure your data? You have lots of parameter information, like the parameter names, units, who is the PI of the data set, and which methods and devices did you use. Here we use, in general, data is interoperable, so we use common formats and standards and controlled vocabularies, and it's also reusable because of the rich metadata that is published together with the data. And also you have licensed information, so it's clear how you can use the data set. And here we have open access license because PANGAEA is an open access archive. If you scroll even further down the dataset landing page, you can see the dataset. So this is an example for a tabular dataset, and you can either download the dataset or open or look at the dataset in HTML view. What is also a great advantage of PANGAEA is that we do lots of cross-linking. So as I said before, we can link your data via the reference to other data sets, for example, sequences that are archived at the European Nucleotide Archive, but also to other publications, references to projects. We can link the ORCID ID to the researcher. We can link to sample numbers, but also to regarding organisms to the World Register of Marine Species, for example. We've also heard about this before, that PANGAEA datasets are harvested by many services and portals. One example is the Marine Data Portal, which is a community portal for the German marine research community, and you can find lots of marine data there. And if you, for example, type in the label of the cruise that we had just had a look at the dataset in PANGAEA in the search bar, you can find as a second hit the PANGAEA dataset that I've just showed you. What is also really important is that you make your data citation count. So I showed you that each PANGAEA dataset has a full dataset citation. So please make sure that you cite it correctly. And here we can see an example. You would, for example, add an in-text citation in the data availability statement, and then add the full dataset citation in the reference list of the paper. And also please make sure that you always refer to the persistent links in your paper. And we will always give you some information how the final dataset citation will look like. So now I would like to move on to explain to you how you should prepare your data and metadata for submission to PANGAEA. So first you think about what did you measure? So which parameter and units do you have? Who measured it? So who are the dataset authors? Who is the PI? And is there an article related to your data? As we focus on georeference data, of course, you will think about where did you measure your data? So the latitude, longitude, and also third dimension depending on your data, like depth and ice, water, sediment, or altitude. Also, when did you measure your data, like the date, time, or age for sediment cores, and how did you measure your data? So the methods and device information. So regarding metadata preparation, please be aware that data authors do not have to be the same as the paper authors, because these can be the contributors to the collection and the processing of the data. And for example, there could be a technical assistant who's not involved in writing the paper, but he was still involved in data collection and could be a dataset author. You have to provide titles and abstracts for each dataset, and they do not have to be the same as the paper. So they need to be different and clearly describe the dataset. And we have also some guidelines in our help pages. Please provide a preliminary paper citation if your dataset is related to a manuscript, and any other reference that are related to the dataset, including the DOI, is available. Please provide the project and award information to us, because we also link this information to the dataset. And you can include separate metadata tables, like multiple abstracts and dataset titles, the campaign and event info, and I will explain a little more in detail what it means later, and the parameter information like the full names, units, PIs, methods, and comments. So I would like to now show you our expeditions website, because I just want to point out, if you have data from a German research vessel, we have actually quite a lot of campaign and station information already available in our database, because this is archived officially at PANGAEA. So if you have data from these research cruises, please have a look at the website. See if this campaign and station information is already available, and then please use the same event labels in your data set. If your information is not available or you're not sure, please always also provide this campaign and event information to us. Just short information about our parameters, how we standardize them. So they have a mix of relevant standard vocabularies. For example, for species names, they can refer, for example, to the World Register of Marine Species, and also community standards. You can find a complete parameter list under this link, but it might be a little bit difficult for you to find the right parameter there. So I would also recommend that you check out similar datasets at the PANGAEA database. And if you find a similar dataset, please use this parameter name. But don't worry too much if you don't find out, or it's really hard to find out what the right parameter name is. Don't worry, there's a PANGAEA editor sitting there and helping you to find the right parameter. We will hear more about this process tomorrow. So what is most important is that you always provide the full parameter name of the unit to us. So if you have prepared your metadata, you can move on to prepare your data table. So if you have tabular data, we have some requirements there. So the preferred format is tab-delimited text files in UTF-8 encoding or Excel format. Please provide the positions, so the latitude, longitude, and decimal degrees for every sample observation measurement carried out anywhere on Earth. Also include a third dimension like the depth in water. That depends, of course, on your data set. Date time must be provided in ISO format and as coordinated universal time. And if you, as I'm a biologist too, if I know that local time is quite important in biology. So if you have biological data, for example, you can provide the local time in addition to the UTC time to us. Yeah, please don't forget to add a unit to your parameters. The first column of your data table should always be the event in the station or station ID and explain all abbreviations, and you can find our full guidelines in our wiki. So as I said, told you about a wiki now. So if you're looking for help and you still have some questions after the workshop, something comes up when you prepare your data table, please also have a look at our help pages, because you can find our full submission guidelines there and also our templates. So we really highly recommend that you use our templates, because this really speeds up the archiving process of your data. So now I would like to show you our template or some examples how our data table should look like in PANGAEA. So this is actually from our generic template for field observation data. We have that in Excel format, also in tab-delimited text file format. So this is the Excel file. And you can see we have several tabs here. So you have an info page with general information about data submission. You have a table with campaign information, a table with event information, information about the parameters, and then finally your data. So here you can see how a campaign event table should, for example, look like. So you can see for the campaign, mandatory is the campaign label, the begin and the end of date of the campaign, the basis which would be the research vessel for a sea expedition at the sea and a research station for a land campaign, and the responsible scientist. For the event information, you have a unique event label. You can also add an optional label, the name of the campaign if it's related to the campaign, the area, what is also mandatory, which device you use to take the sample or measure the data, the date time of the event. If you measure the profile, you can also add the end of the profile, and of course latitude and longitude. An optional would be elevation, and you can find the full set of information you can add there in our template. So now here you can see an example for the parameter table. Maybe you remember I showed you this data set in the beginning and you saw this parameter table, and this is actually the information for that. So this is quite important for us, especially if you have really complex parameters. So it makes it much easier to add this information to our system if you provide this parameter table. And you can see that you add the full parameter names there, the unit, the principal investigator. Of course, the principal investigator could be different for different parameters if you have a mixed data set. And then you add the method and device that you use to measure the data. We also have a certain syntax there, so you should please provide this information for the primary instrument as instrument type, manufacturer, and model name, and you can also find more information on our help pages about that. So now I would finally show you like 2 examples how the data table should look like. So this is a quite common example for field data. So at first you have the event and station ID as the first column. Then you add the information about the coordinates, so latitude, longitude, and decimal degrees. Then you have the third dimension, here depth, water. And also please make sure you always add the full parameter name with the unit, because some abbreviations may be clear to you, but not clear to us what it means. Then you had the date time in ISO format as coordinated universal time, and then finally the data afterwards. So in my project, I often get questions about laboratory data. So I would also like to show you another example here, because we also accept laboratory data at PANGAEA, but it looks a little bit different. So as the event, you would actually add the sampling event in the field. So if you, for example, you did experience with sediment, or in this case, you did an experience with some species, you would give the information about the original sampling event to us, if available. Then another mandatory column would be the type of the study here, because we would like to separate this data set from field data, which is our focus in PANGAEA. Then you actually have the date time of observation in the lab. And then you have the species names here. Please also provide a unique identifier here, because we link this to the World Register of Marine Species, for example. Then we have information about experimental treatments, and then finally the data. So if you have prepared your metadata and data, you're ready to submit to PANGAEA. Just a short note here is that we have, unfortunately, quite long processing time at the moment at PANGAEA. It can be up to several months, unfortunately, because we have many submissions at the moment. And so it really helps if you prepare your data really well. This really speeds up the process, and of course also depends on the complexity of your data set. So please submit your data as early as possible, at the latest together with your manuscript. And if you're working on a manuscript and you're worried because PANGAEA is an open access library and you don't want your data to be open access right away, don't worry. We have the option for an access restriction, or so-called moratorium of up to 2 years. So with this, I would like to say thank you, and we see if there are some questions.